down on us today? If you can, thank you. Good. And hang on, because we might get more volume yet.
I think that's as loud as it goes now.
Okay, is that good? Brett, can you hear me really well? Thank you. All right, welcome. We're going to get started right now. We're excited to be in this great icon of Cache Valley history, the Bluebird restaurant, to read poems for you tonight. We want to thank the Bluebird owners and staff, especially Millie Tullis, who also works for me as a writing center tutor at Utah State University. She and her helpers, Brittany, Sean, Weston, and Luke, are keeping things running smoothly for us tonight. And thanks to Amias Shipley, our Helicon West blog manager and videographer, who is also now our sound man, who's recording the reading. Thanks also to the Logan Library. Joseph is here. The Logan Library is a great promoter of all things literary in Cache Valley, and Joseph helps us do our PR for the Poet Laureate events. Thanks, Joseph, and his lovely daughter, Sarah. Also the English department and the Utah Humanities. The Utah Humanities helped us tonight with this event, and we appreciate them a lot. They help us with many literary events in Cache Valley. And thank you, our dear audience, for being here. Our first poet is Margaret Pettis, who lives on the south end of the valley in Hiram and was one of my daughter Lorian's favorite teachers. Margaret taught freshman English for 41 years. She did not retire. That's what I say. I did a presentation at Adams School on Friday and I'm still tired. That was only 2 hours. So Margaret taught freshman English, but then she didn't retire after she retired because she's taught poetry and art ever since, illustrating her own books, leading her famous sketch crawls across the state. She has some colorful material. She was, she used to pack mules. That's what I wanted to say. She used to pack mules as a wilderness ranger for the U.S. Forest Service. A lifelong wilderness advocate, Margaret says she has a deep love for Utah's wild places and critters. Welcome, Margaret.
Thank you very much. It's really nice to see so many friendly, familiar faces here. Oh yes, we're a little different in height. Thank you. I'm going to go rather chronologically tonight. Notice the time. I want to make sure we all have our times. Back in 1973, I was a wilderness ranger, and one thing that I did was I did a lot of writing while I was in the saddle. So my poems were very short, and they were very much influenced by my college professor, who was Gary Snyder at the University of California, Davis. I admit that I was very impacted by his amazing self. So I wrote this little book called The Saddleback Poems, and a lot of these are reminiscent of things that I learned from him, just learning that you can be an observer and a capturer of the beauty around you. So this one is called, well, like Gary Snyder, it doesn't have a title, so there is no name. 5 minutes from camp, after 20 miles of clearing mountain skies, tan and black storm clouds spatter solid walls of rain on the lakes and on us. One part of the sky a golden spotlight of mountains, another a rainbow on a black blanket of air. Farther across the mountains, the rain moves, leaving a stillness of evening. Ride into camp, soaked, poncho buried under bags, on the first mule, hat broken down for the river flow, saddle seat drenched, my jeans to unload the mules, fill the feed bags, lay the campfire logs, eyes bigger than my stomach, I leave the squirrels' supper, too tired to read, too tired to sing, 15 hours in the saddle, all I want is my nest of pine needles. I have a lot of horse references. I've lived with horses all my life, so I can't help it. They're my buds. I put together another little booklet called Appaloosa Earth, and this one is all haiku. I really like haiku. I think for the small size, they're immensely powerful. This one has woodcuts that I've accompanied them. This was Great Basin haiku, so all of it written in Nevada and western Utah. And I'll just read you 2 of them. They're very short. And if you feel like going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you can yeah, we all know that, right? Better know that. For ages, black rocks rolled from this jagged outcrop, waterfalls of stones. Another one, 5,000 years ago, still clinging to Wheeler Peak, ancient bristlecone. See, now you can just go anywhere and you can start viewing life through 17 syllables, and it's respectful, it's peaceful, it's almost a mantra when you start doing it. So respect the haiku. It's a great form. In 1993, I was fortunate to publish this book called Choke Cherry Rain, and it's I call these kind of like cowboy poems. I had a wonderful neighbor who was a real cowboy, and he had herded sheep out in the West Desert, and he knew all the trails up in the Bear River Range, and his name was Elmer, but we called him Curly. He didn't have any hair, so you didn't really know if that was true or not, but we called him Curly. And he was a wonderful man. So I put together a lot of the poems of experiences that I had with him. This one's called No Place for a Woman, and it's dedicated to a woman that I met in Hiram. All year she bucks hay for the horses, dresses wounds, combs burrs, rakes the spring, patches fence wire, and gentles colts, while her husband might be working a hayfield for a buddy in Idaho, or be tipping a cold brew at the tavern downtown. But on opening day, when he pulls out his blaze jacket and rifle and hooks up the trailer and gasses the truck, he oozes, "Wish me luck, babe, keep the kids out of trouble." With his buddies, he loads the colts. She's worked all summer and would love to take for a ride in the hills. It's the children she must gentle today. Hunting's no place for a woman. Right. So I put together a new collection called Swallow Swift. It's a mess. Wow. But hope you like them. The Chi of Fur. Chi spelled Q-I. A needle of white fire stitched cloud to ground. We stashed our heavy packs, tarped them tight, and scrambled beneath a canopy of fur. Sheets of gold rain veiled the middle fork. Quiet birds shared our house of dry boughs. Patient half an hour, starting to shiver, I taught you Qigong. Arms in a slow arc, legs shifting stance, hands pushing dark energy away, pulling in the light again and again. The storm growled down the canyon. We emerged into a sparkling kingdom of trees, hefted our loaded kelties, and followed the puddle trail toward the pass. I'll change tone here a little bit. This This is called Sacrament with Shovel. Cesar, the sexton, kneels on the lip of the grave, a pale green fringe of severed grass. Leaning into the darkness, he gently lowers the case containing Dad's ashes into its final refuge. Scraping the bed of the rusted pickup with a blunt-tipped spade, he releases a runnel of dirt that taps like summer rain on the copper lid below. 5 bereft faces focus inward as the priest from Salinas commemorates the father and husband oddly gone. Golden grass shimmers on the Sutter Buttes beyond the cemetery yews. Brushing tiny clods from the grassy pelt onto the mound, Cesar taps all with a scuffed boot, then drives away, shovel stowed in the truck for the next tending to rituals for the dead. Maybe a related one is this. This is called Sanctuary. Under pastel blankets, the grandmothers sit, wheelchairs parked in the hall, fingers bent with age, hair clipped and white, like the shoes squeaking past on CNAs beset with paper cups bearing sweet sedation. Beyond the west window, the tundra swans arrive, circling through heavy clouds. Alighting on bright water, hooting to their clan, they ride feather-white reflections into the reeds. If only we could choose the frailty of our bodies, housed in desperation, medication, dementia, or the freedom to fly and die among our own without pity or sanctuary. For swan or dowager, death waits in the wings. I've been known to trespass. This is called Beyond the Wires. But if you don't tell where you trespass, you can't be busted, right? You don't leave any trace. It's okay. Beyond the Wires. I'm sorry if there are any children in the audience. With Meadowlark, our witness, we nod and trespass, plying bare skin through strands barbed against cattle, and skulk toward the creek. A parquetry of sunlight and lacy leaves reflects the looping dance of flickers in the limbs. On a flat boulder, we share a thermos, provolone, soprasata. To whispers of stoneflies, juncos, and wrens, we settle to the pulse of decay. I have all these winter poems, but it doesn't feel like it out there. I don't really want to talk about it. I want to kind of, I think I'll stay in some bare ground poems for a while, okay? Is that good? Another will come soon enough. This one also happened in good old Harm. Sunshine Shrine. In a crusade of one, I crossed the rocky headlands. You told me not to do that. Okay, I got it now, I respect it. Wow, that's heavy. Okay, starting over. Sunshine Shrine. In a crusade of one, I crossed the rocky headlands, my horse picking her way through sage and earthen ropes of winter rodents. It had been a perilous journey. Vipers of wire coiled in thistle, blades of amber glass slit through the soil, brittle Holstein hides sprawled in the ravine, porcelain whirlpools leaned akimbo in a rusty nest of Pennzoil drums. Here, a pack of camels, there, a can of curs, tossed for all to curse. Nice rhyme, huh? Curs. At a dollop of sheltered snow, my horse swung wide, velvet legs of a deer strangled in fence wire would bound no more. But high in the paintbrush and yarrow, where meadowlarks sang in first light, I rode penitent for my people, whose bullets, poisons, and snares emptied these once wild lands. In a simple clutch of boulders, I dismounted at a shrine of regular parishioners, red fox, marmot, red tail, and bowed to the cloud sacrament of hail, catching in pockets of deerscat a rosary unstrung. Poems are really fun. They can be fun. They should be fun. Recently I went to the sun tunnels. Has anyone been out to the sun tunnels? No? Okay, I understand why. It's very, very far away, very remote. Take Highway 30 all the way to the Nevada border, down to Lucin, you know where Lucin is, and then past Lucin. So it's worth a visit. It's remote and wonderful. But mine is a different treatment of the sun tunnels. Horses at the sun tunnels. They came at sunset, 2 bays and a palomino, snorting, trotting ahead of dust, trailing them across the playa. With long yellow incisors, they nabbed what grass they could muster, then toured the odd art gallery. The tall bay rubbed her burr-snarled forelock on the curved concrete wall, still warm from the August day. The palomino found shade in the lee of the 8-foot-tall tube, a spyglass into a glimmering mirage. The small bay, with 3 socks, rubbed his sweaty neck along the aperture of the great tube, and raised his tail to sign the guest book. Extending his lips, he tested the portal, snorted in curiosity, and stepped inside, his silhouette part of the art. The pattern of perforations in the cool cement ceiling dappled his dark coat with constellations, flickering from one shard of sun, slipping over Lucin Hill. As quickly as he entered, the horse reconsidered, ducked his head, and backed out fast, the echo from the clatter spurring him, hock first, off the lip of the pipe onto familiar, solid ground. Something in the east drew eyes and ears to the sea of sage. Fleeing their fear, they broke away. Ragged hooves stabbing hard clay, basalt, and sand, scattering the horned larks. With tails like flags, the 3 wild things surged up the escarpment and vanished in the twilight. If you ever get a chance to come across wild horses, it's really unforgettable, it seems to me. Are you timing me?
No?
I think I have 5 minutes.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Let's see. Have you been to the Spiral Jetty? Put your hands up. Okay, let's compare experiences. On our way to the Great Salt Lake, we dallied among a band of ranging broodmares, shaggy, Roman-nosed, deep-branded, their spindly buckskin foals dozing in the sage. Like bison, boulders encircled the nursery. Beyond the shoreline, shadows raced on dark wings across the promontory mountains, and a pier without planks headed nowhere. What remained of Lake Bonneville hid her pelicans and hunting harriers, passing between us and the sun. The pilot of a biplane dipped white wing tips at us, penitents crushing brittle crystals under muddy boots, following inward, the spiral of basalt and gleaming salt. Through the weft of clouds, the sun sent a shuttle, pressing with soft fingers gentle hues of lake and dry grass, mud flat, bird wing, pale blue islands, and silver mirage into a cloth of mirrors. Like atlatls, floating islands hugged the shallow horizon of all we see of a sea set free. I also like trains. If you're a train nut, you're a train nut forever. So maybe this will mean something to train people. It's called Feet First Through Nevada. One year I got a berth. I really splurged and got to sleep. You know, the only train leaving Salt Lake is 12 o'clock westbound, midnight. And usually it means it leaves about 1. And you are just beat by the time you get on. So I ahead of time, I rented a berth, which is so cool. It's so tiny behind your own little curtain. It's very Orient Express sort of stuff, but you sleep the whole time. Feet First Through Nevada. The traveler's moon awoke me, tilting her starry mirrors toward my moon-snared eyes. From behind the chilly window of my curtained berth, I watched our silver engine headlight washing cliffs with eerie looping light, probing the dark slot of a canyon. Jackrabbits froze in shadows, coyotes skipped crescendo, Deeth, Osino, Elko. In the caboose, the porter dozed through Beowawe. On blue iron rails, humming beneath the car, icy steel wheels raced the equinox across the Great Basin to dawn. I'll read you one more. Keep bumping that, I'm sorry. That little thing is making noise, isn't it? No, it's not your problem. It's mine, truly. Okay. So let's go to Sweden for a minute, and we'll call my part done. This is called Gavlastan. Has anyone been to that place? Sweden. It's just, the colors were amazing. Tight little neighborhood. At the golden kiss planted on a blue evening, Gamlastan blushes. I cross a marble bridge commemorating kings and walk the harbor road out of Stockholm. In midnight's afterglow, the eastbound ferry churns past rain-slick cormorants in crowns of tortured spruce, steers clear of islands like dolphins cut from stone, shadowing our prow. The light of night dares to flicker on fishing boat windows like torchlight on glass-blown floats strung across the Gulf of Bothnia. Island by island, Finland rises dripping from the sea. Thank you.
I can't resist. I told Amias that he could maybe use the camera and pan when you're having an excellent time, but I think we're all mesmerized. Margaret's poetry was so great that we didn't think of anything, so I had to quickly snap a picture to show how satisfied you are by Margaret's poetry. It was wonderful. Thank you. And Margaret, I guess you'll tell people at the back afterward that if they want to order books. So see Margaret afterward if you want to order books. Our next reader is Heidi Blankenship, another of Margaret's students, by the way, who grew up, she says, with wilderness on the horizon in Wellsville, Utah. Heidi graduated from USU and was waiting for an editing job when she was invited to apply as a ranger. Well, she's been a ranger ever since. Officially traversing the Colorado Plateau and the Sonoran Desert, living among the saguaro in southeast Arizona. When we three poets, Margaret and Heidi and I, got together at Herm's Inn to plan this evening, I asked Heidi if she had a partner. She said, why, yes, the desert. She snuggles up to the desert every night. She writes poems to and about it. She brought her latest book here tonight to share with you. I hope you'll buy a copy. They will be at the back on the table after the Q&A, and we'll get acquainted with it right now. Here's Heidi.
So, can everyone hear me? Yeah? Okay, excellent. I tend to be really soft-spoken, so I do need the microphone. So, thank you, Star, and thank you, Margaret. It's wonderful to share the podium with people, great poets like you, so thank you very much. It's also fun to be reading close to my hometown. Whenever I return, I visit one of my most favorite places in Wellsville. Is anyone here from Wellsville? Besides my brother and sisters? A couple people. Well, I visited this place this morning. This is for Wellsville Dam. Muskrat on the water, hair dotted white, slicked back in silver ripples. Dead plants rattle in the southern wind. Wild ducks keep their distance. Undisturbed by geese, muskrat nibbles. Delicate toes pull at the bank. Part grasses and ice disappear beneath the slate brown water. Muskrat swims close to the bank, sees me, dives, splashes, doubles back, resurfaces for a second look, then disappears. It never fails. The ripples on the surface, the V of retreating ducks, a muskrat parting the water. Here, where the half-moon floats above us, these waters always pull me closer and closer to center. I feel pretty fortunate having grown up in a rural area in Utah. And I grew up in a family where my dad and my mom took us outside a lot. And so I grew up fishing and hunting and camping and having the full Western experience. So I like to read a poem for my dad who was here. Rainbows. It wasn't the fish he was after, casting and pulling, missing and casting at Porcupine, Flaming Gorge, and Strawberry, while we dodged mosquitoes and the sun dipped lower and lower. He was missing and casting, catching and holding, releasing and casting again, teaching us the beauty of tenacity and motion. I spent a great deal of my life working as a ranger on the Colorado Plateau, all across southern Utah, and now dipping into Arizona. It's been a lot of fun, but unfortunately a lot of those areas are under threat of becoming fragmented or destroyed, and so I always like to encourage people, if you love your public lands, this is a great time to voice your opinions and to speak up. This poem was written in Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument in the Paria River Corridor, which has been protected from off-road travel for 20 years and is now threatened with becoming a freeway for UTVs. Dripping Palace. Red stone burns with its own heat. A shaft of light ignites cottonwood leaves, and thousands of diamonds dripping, ledge after ledge, to moss, fern, columbine, reabsorbed, sliding, they drip again, falling to mud, stone, pool. Silence and spring water music, the tune of Genesis entwined with the scent of wet earth. I close my eyes, all around, dripping. It saves me. I'd like to read a poem for a friend of mine. He also graduated from Utah State University. He got the degree that I probably should have in recreation management, but I got a degree in English instead.
English.
Go English, it's a great program. But he died recently, and this poem is for Bodhi. Arrowheads. When all we had were hands and eyes and time, I remember the curve of your back as you bent to the ground searching for them. I didn't believe anything could be found so easily until I found one, salmon-colored, pale, imperfect, and shiny, silent as the black brush above an ancient canyon. Some things are revealed when we least expect them, the glint of sunlight on an exposed edge or an orb of darkness nestled in white sand. Jagged edges leading to smooth hollows, 1,000-foot cliffs abated abruptly by sand define us. We are powerless confronted by their beauty. I still know nothing about you except the way you hide your eyes, as though you could keep the arcane essence of your soul from spilling. The bats sense the stain of desert varnish seeping through your veins as well as anyone. It's elemental. We cannot choose which things we love. In 2016, I moved from Moab, Utah, way down into the Sonoran Desert. Has anyone ever visited Arabica Canyon? My sister, yes. Oh, it's someone else, awesome. Well, not to advertise, but it's a great wilderness area, and that's where I tromp around. I had aloe vera blooming in my yard when I flew up to Cold Cache Valley, so it was sort of a shock for me. This is the very first poem that I wrote at my new ranger station there. Listening to bees. How do we fix all the things that are broken? I'm not asking about window screens or bathroom doors or flat tires. How do we fix the important things, like broken hearts, cracked into throbbing, aching chasms, or an argument with your mother the week before she dies, or a moment requiring more words or less, or maybe an action too late? The bees in my yard land on the lips of the red aloe flowers and crawl in head first, disappearing completely within those hollow ruby walls, then reemerging again as though rebirthed. Perhaps that is the way of things, crawling deep inside a beautiful space, extracting all there is to know, then reemerging. Are there any hikers out there? A couple scattered here and there. Has anyone ever done a through hike? No one's done a through hike. That's okay. Back in 2012, I decided that I wanted to take a walk, and I took a long walk on the Arizona Trail, which stretches 800 miles from the Mexico border up to the Vermilion Cliffs, which is east of Kanab, Utah. And I started hiking with two friends of mine. They stayed with me from the Mexican border up to Patagonia. And from there I hiked solo. So I had company for the first about 40 or 50 miles, and then the rest I hiked on my own. I wrote poetry along the way because that's what I do. And so a lot of the poems in my book are really short because I was writing them while I was walking, literally. And I took photos because my family demanded them. I'm not normally the type who takes photos, so I'm getting better at it. And then after I was done with my hike, I wanted a way to thank the people who'd helped me, because it takes a lot of people to do a through hike. People think they're going to do it solo, but it doesn't work out that way. So I had a ton of people and to help me, and so I decided to compile my poems and make some artwork. And I made a book. And I was working on the north rim of the Grand Canyon at the time, and so the book was published in St. George, Utah. And I called it Memorizing Shadows, printed out 37 copies, and I was so happy it was done. So I sent it out to 37 people, kept one, and I was really done. I mean, it took me 7 to 8 weeks to hike the trail and 3 years to write a book. And then my friends asked for more copies, which is always a dangerous thing. And I was living in Moab, Utah at the time, and went and did some research at the library and found some publishing companies and sent it out there thinking, that's the last I'm going to hear of this. I can go move on. And then the first place I sent it wanted to publish it. So here it is. So it was published out of Maine, and it just came out in 2017. Why? We all need to revive our spirits somehow. Remind ourselves we are still alive. Discover air so sweet it induces euphoria in our souls. To experience all life, remembering each precious second deep down in our marrow. Being a woman hiking solo, you often get a lot of people who want to tell you how to do it. And I didn't necessarily need that information, but it fit into a poem pretty well, so it's all good. Warnings. All the way they warned me. Park scorpions, smugglers, lions. But what of the mad dogs in Enzenberg Canyon? hidden from view, bellowing from rocky ridges with ungodly yelps and yowls, or the bees in the black hills and at Push Ridge, darkening the sky in a gigantic buzzing swarm, part hover, part motion. A gun won't save you, not here. But if you whisper and tiptoe, walk faster than light, be still in your mind and bend with the shadows, you might escape, just once, without notice. For any of you who decide to attempt a through hike in the future, know that you're going to get really hungry. And so it's great to have towns along the way because you're going to eat a lot. And so this poem I wrote when I reached Superior, Arizona. I order a second plate of enchiladas, having already devoured the first. Hands on her hips, she asks, "Honey, where are you gonna put that?" It's hard to explain, having already downed that second plate for 2 weeks, dream walking on the trail. Arizona Trail doesn't yet get as much traffic as the Appalachian Trail or the PCT, so you'll go for a really long time without seeing anyone at all. And so when you do see someone, you remember them. And this poem was inspired by a waitress in Pine, Arizona. "Don't you get scared out there?" she asked, bending in close, half whispering. "I'd be afraid something would get me," she said. What is this fear of the wild? I would much rather be jumped by a mountain lion than kidnapped by a serial killer or mutilated in a car accident. Death happens, everywhere, anywhere, every day. One thing is certain. Whatever has you grinding your teeth at night or clenching your jaw and screaming will find you on the long trail, be it daylight or dark, and it will rip your heart out anew with demons and revelations that plant you on the ground in awe of their death. Your own mind is the biggest challenge out there. Is anyone here familiar with Everett Roos? Excellent. The rest of you, shame. Shame. Everett Roos was an amazing artist and writer and a wanderer who ranged all throughout the Colorado Plateau, and he disappeared in 1934 near Escalante, Utah, in the canyons, and no one has ever seen him again. Part of the Arizona Trail stretches from Pine, Arizona up the Mogollon Rim, and that's one of the areas where he probably walked. So this poem was inspired by him. I thought of him a lot while I was out there tromping around. Elk sign all morning on the last of red earth for many miles. Everett Roos ascended this slope, weaving between manzanita, oak, and ponderosa to find his snowy forest over the lip and see the desert stretching out below. He must have known this bed of slick rock. I just lost my place. This magical edge poised between worlds. Perhaps his hand touched this juniper as he looked out across the land, memorizing the shadows, holding them close to his heart. My nieces are here, and they told me this is one of their favorite poems, so I have to read this one for them. Bee operas. Songs stick and fade during long hours of walking, and sometimes in a lonely moment, I create operas. Don't tell. Belting out nonsensical songs in every possible musical genre to everything and everyone in listening range. Songs that, fortunately for you, will never be heard again, except, perhaps, by cacti, a million bees, and meadowlarks. Everyone always asks me, what was your most favorite day on the trail? And when you're hiking a long distance, it's like one huge day with memorable times in between. And one of those memorable times was a wicked bad day. So it was such a bad day, it inspired a poem. Bad day. Awakened, hot, and grumpy, my map suddenly transformed into Sanskrit verse. and I walk too far in the wrong direction for water because I can't decipher Sanskrit. And if there was a decent road in this God-forsaken country, God knows I'd hitch out. My pack is too heavy, my knees hurt, the vultures don't want me. I stop for an early lunch, and the only speck of shade, ants crawling all over me. A bee ambles over, and afraid of a sting, I tell him to leave. And he turns, clambers over tiny pebbles, stops a pace away, and dies. Miserable wreck of a human. I pack things up, stumble onward, still grumbling. Then a loud hiss stops me. Heart pounds, breath quickens, every sense searching, scanning the margins between cactus and shrubs for the origin of sound, and there, blocking the trail from edge to edge, bright orange, striped black, sun faded, beady, scaled skin, tongue whipped out, dark, bottomless eyes watching, the largest lizard in the United States. One of the only venomous lizards in the whole world. Ready to dart or bite or do whatever Heloderma suspectum will do. I stare. Gila monster stares back. We wait. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10. Neither of us move. Finally, Gila monster turns, faces away. I exhale, inching slowly around the reptile, dodging cactus spines and pricklies, alert, once again, alive and ready to walk. And most of the other days went like this. People always ask, what do you get from hiking that far? And this is it. Full. Keep your life wherever you may be, and I'll keep mine. Every day, wandering back into myself, each step a little closer, carrying my heart across the desert, returning again and again to the earth below me, windblown, consumed by billions of stars. When you walk miles and miles and miles alone, your brain will do funky things. You'll start remembering everything that ever happened to you in your entire life. And it'll be pulled out so vividly in your brain that you'll have to work really hard to remember that you're not there anymore. So this poem is dedicated to all those who have ever experienced that phenomenon. Words. All the words of past or present lovers, positive or negative, we carry them with us. All the words of our mothers and fathers, teachers, friends, siblings, rivals, even strangers, we carry them in our hearts everywhere we walk. May all our words coming in or going out be soft, be kind. May all our words dwell peacefully in every heart. May our words be gentle, mindful, reflecting good intentions, and easy to carry. I'll just read one more. I haven't been paying any attention to time, Star, but hopefully it's all right. Every day, you will find something in your lives that's going to try to shatter your dreams, and I just recommend that you look for the other things in your life that are right next to you. Celebrate. Every day, there is something to fall in love with. Bright orange poppies bobbing their heads beside the trail, the long arms of acatillos leave to their tips and ready to burst into scarlet plumes. The tangled bodies of saguaros leaning slowly into one another in a silent dance that lasts a lifetime. All around, the world is full of celebration.
Heidi, that was absolutely beautiful. Thank you. I'm your last reader for tonight. I have the distinct honor of being Logan's first poet laureate for the city. I brought my book, Thin Spines of Memory, and I'll give you just a little preview of that from the back of the book. Snag. Step out of the river into a prickly pear forest, bait cannons and spines, old rotted lines strung from junipers, ending in sinkers and spinners. Over the beach, fish bones, maggoty carcasses, the bright flash of a lost lure. Hope crowds up, shedding its clothes, where girls and boys jumped into rapids, drifted together as if drawn by fishing line. Out of the stickers, our lure shines, hot sand, wet skin, nerve endings afire with invisible prickles, hair-thin spines of memory. I've read a lot from this book in the last few months, and it's about my farm girl bringing up and the coming of age on the Bear River in southeast Idaho. But now I want to read some poems about where that Idaho farm girl ended up for the last 50 years. So tonight you get some of the Logan poems. And before I start, I want to announce an upcoming event. I will be reading for the Women's March this coming Saturday, January 20th at around 2:30 at the old Cache County Courthouse. As I was looking for a poem to revise and read for that occasion, I happened upon my master's thesis, a poetry collection titled Scenes, Conversations, and Ceremonies. And I realized that the poems I wrote back then in 1997 are highly relevant in today's social and political realm. And although the subject matter has a bit of a dark edge, these poems contain a fair amount of humor. Gosh, we've had a lot of humor tonight. This is good, huh? These poems revolve around our local newspaper, the Herald Journal. And so there you are. You get the picture. And I'll just read the poems straight through, all of them having to do with local news. And maybe not so much wildlife, well, yes, wildlife of a different nature. And after the poems, we're having questions, so get ready to ask us absolutely anything in the world that you would like to ask. Here we go. First poem. Peanut butter. It was all over the place, said Detective Westland. It was even on the door handle to the fridge. I got it on my hand when I was opening it. The Herald Journal, November 26, 1997. 1. He's too needy, my daughter tells me, and I see another broken heart on the way, another man flung aside in the wake of her, over the edge. Logan police, responding to a report of gunshots on Tuesday, found a naked man covered in peanut butter and contemplating suicide. 3. Remember, Mom, when you left him, what we lived on for months? It was soothing, the smell of it, how it came out of the jar, how smoothly it layered the soft white bread, the flavor, the texture of it in my mouth. 4. Over the edge, they said, lavished with it, gun in hand, bullet holes everywhere. Police aren't sure what charges to file or why the peanut butter. 5. I still love it, she says. I eat it every day just to remind myself how easy it should be. Remodeling. Safety measures around the home, such as having adequate blinds, can help people avoid being victimized. The Herald Journal, January 5th, 1998. With the bathroom under construction, I wash my hair in the kitchen sink, put on my face in the hall. We put up a mirror there, screwed it to the laundry room door frame on hinges so it opens out to a rear view reflection in the mirror on the other side. I stand in the hall, halfway between the back porch and the kitchen window, drying my hair and applying my makeup, careful to keep the blinds closed. But all that sunlight moving back up to mid-sky after winter solstice begins to pry between the slats, peers out from under the edges, flashes and forces its way until I have to let it in, and it pierces the house, runs through from front to back, strikes the hall mirror and glances off my face, and I don't care anymore who sees me standing here adding blush to my cheeks. Between. She says she thinks she might be a lesbian, says she wants to give it a couple of days, but she's sure she'll move in with a girl, the former lover of a high school junior teacher, turned off by men, tuned in to women, ready to start a new life. She asks what I think of it. I say, women are lovely, they smell good, their skin is nice, they're sexy, more open, and not a bit less emotionally draining than a man. Worker dies after fall into salsa container. The Herald Journal, November 26, 1997. Tuesday, arm caught in a blending machine, a young female worker was pulled headfirst into a vat of salsa and drowned. It nudges my arm, tugs at my elbow, then pulls hard. I smell vinegar, hear bones grind. No pain at first, only a burst of hot, thick red, and I'm pinned, upside down. It took 15 minutes, a co-worker said, to extricate her body from the heavy steel blades. How long, I wonder, does it take to drown? 2 or 3 women. Do you ever wonder what happens to the people in those odd news stories, like that incident in Ogden 2 years ago? 1. They came to the funeral home weeping, 2 women, and left with the ashes, a soft constellation of glittering gray poured into a box of Kleenex. The funeral director, appalled and embarrassed, is grilled on the nightly news. The family, they say, too shaken to comment. What shall they do with the woman's urn, a third of the contents missing? 2. My sister and I go hiking this morning, fall air, cool smell of rain, wet leaves, black soil, clouds that reach down the hollow to honor a friend who loved fall in the mountains, tang of leaves that drift like wings, feel of rain in her hair. We drive north to Idaho, park at the forest boundary. She brings Kleenex, I have my kerchief, pocket knife, Band-Aids, matches, tin of antihistamine, and a screw-top container of Vaseline. We climb through the gate, walk up the dirt path, cross Crooked Creek 3 times. When we get to the fork where Maple and Cherry converge, we take the upper trail, thread through maple, then juniper, make our way in suddenly pouring rain over shale slides, rough boulders, ragged cliff edges. Finally, we stand at the summit in clear blue sky, where canyon winds bring up a bright, eternal vortex of flying autumn leaves, and I imagine somewhere 2 women are scattering small, gray stars. On the news, they say no charges filed as yet. What would the charges be? Theft of a box of Kleenex? 2 more poems. Last poem will be about turkeys. And this one was published in Petroglyph, a USU magazine, in fall 1997. And my friend Shannon Ballum is here tonight. And I remember in the late 1990s, Shannon reading stacks of submissions that high. She'd sit over at the student center and have coffee and read all of these submissions for Petroglyph. We were so lucky to have her and to have Petroglyph. It went the way of a lot of the literary magazines, budget cuts, and off it went. But Petroglyph was a great magazine, and thank you, Shannon. So this poem is a classic. It gets a lot of requests, especially from my partner, Mitch, who's in it. And he and I spent a summer in St. George back in 1992. When we moved back home to Logan, I used to drive around a lot looking for poetry inspiration, and found it. Rock chucks, birds, and lizards. I once knew a city rock chuck who lived in the parking lot at the heavy equipment rental, North Main Street, Logan, Utah. He played in the front loaders under backhoes and tractors, popped up out of the asphalt, it seemed, when I parked in the driveway on Sundays when no one else was around. On our farm, before I was born, my sisters had pet rock chucks who came down from the hills to live under the front porch, but Mother said they were dirty things, and she was glad when they finally died out. In the small town where I spent my married life, there was a bird. I don't remember what kind, but it lived in our neighborhood for a season and dive-bombed my daughter every day for a week. It flew out of nowhere and pecked at her head when she walked up the street. Same place every time, halfway between our house and the high school. At 15, my daughter vowed to drop out if I didn't drive her there, only 1 block away. Hiking once in southern Utah, I met a lizard on the West Rim Trail in Zion National Park. It caught a grasshopper half its own size and slowly ate it head first, banged its own head on a rock back and forth to knock the hopper down its throat. I watched the wings disappear, and when the jagged hind legs were all that stuck out, the lizard massaged its throat on a rock and swallowed hard. In a St. George oil and lube shop, my partner and I watched a displaced whiptail climb the cinder block wall while we waited for my car. The owner said, "Hey, Ralph, bring out the lizard catcher." And Ralph came out armed with a can of carburetor cleaner, hit the lizard with a burst of spray, and it dropped, dazed, in the parking lot. "We do it all the time," they said. "It scares the ladies when it climbs the wall like that." And we took the whiptail home with us, built it a big wood and glass aquarium with a bed of red sand and a hot rock, and we fed it crickets and mealworms because I remembered the time I sprayed my trees for 10 caterpillars and found a dozen dead birds on the ground around my Chinese elm the next day. Remembered how I used to spray my yard for bugs and weeds bare-armed and bare-faced. And I thought, sometimes we are simply afraid of the wrong things. Okay, last poem. And by the way, you can get this one and the peanut butter poem in my book, Wild Runners, in the back, after the Q&A. Wild Turkeys for Wendell. And by the way, Wendell was my cousin. He died in his 90s quite a few years ago, and I wrote this poem in 1996, Wild Turkeys for Wendell. And they make love in May. My cousin told me he and his wife watched a gobbler court 2 hens last year, fanned his tail, dragged his wing feathers on the ground, strutted and pranced until his head turned red, gobbled loud enough to notify the world of his affair. Better than a lot of stuff you see on TV, my cousin said. Baby turkeys soon followed their mother around on his ranch where the Idaho Fish and Game released 20 wild turkeys 3 winters ago, brought them from North Dakota, and turned them loose among the cottonwood trees down by the river. This April, a local newspaper reported that a flock of wild turkeys had feasted last fall on a batch of diazinon-tainted grain and promptly died. It seems a well-meaning citizen scattered the grain to feed the turkeys all winter, unaware of the danger of pesticide-treated feed. It reminds my cousin of the turkey massacre he witnessed as a young boy when Uncle Sam and Aunt Minnie raised 100 turkeys and the coyotes attacked them on a hill behind the house. It was a deadly raid, the coyotes grabbing the turkeys and killing them as fast as they could, the turkeys flying too low for home to clear the barbed wire fence. My cousin said he had to turn his head when the wire squeaked with the impact and feathers flew. When the dust settled, my cousin and our uncle gathered up the dead and crippled turkeys, shouldered their rifles, and took care of some coyotes. But the new wild turkeys have more than coyotes, foxes, and bobcats to worry about, more than raccoons and skunks, and my cousin says they better make love while they can. Margaret and Heidi, let's answer questions. I know people have a few. And while they're coming up, somebody shout out your question as loudly as you can, because it's a full room. Amias?
I had a question for Heidi. In one of your poems about being on the trail, you have a line that goes along the lines of, what makes you grit your teeth at night, what makes you grit your teeth and scream will find you. And I wonder, what was it about the trail, if not the wilderness or the danger? What was it that made you grit your teeth?
Me grit my teeth. Probably all the bees in southern Arizona. They were really scary, and there were huge swarms of them, and I'm allergic to bees.
Oh.
And so that really freaked me out a lot. So that was something I worried about daily. And otherwise, just, how I was speaking about, you start remembering your life. There are things that I've done that I regret, and there are things that happened to me that other people regret doing. Those kinds of things come back to you when you're walking, and they just make you grit your teeth.
Margaret saying, yay, we don't have any more questions. Mary Ellen.
Hi. All 3 of you are talented poets. Do you remember the point in your life where you realized that you were a poet? Has it just evolved, or did you have this moment where you thought, yeah, I'm a poet?
Okay, so I've told this story before. When I was 13, I was in a speech class in Montpelier, Idaho, and my teacher said, okay, everybody write a poem. We have 10 minutes before the bell. And so I did, and I had read the old poets Longfellow and Frost and those, and I wrote my poem. It was in rhyming quatrains. It was about my dad. My dad just loved to be outdoors, so I never shut him in, and it was about his dying, and I handed it, I walked up and set it on the teacher's desk, and then I went and sat down, and she called me up to the desk and said, well, where'd you get this poem? And I said, I wrote it. And she said, well, I know, but who wrote it first? And I said, well, I did. And when I finally convinced her that I wrote the poem, she made the class stay after the bell while she read them the poem, and so how could you not be?
sometimes just saying things quickly, catching an image that flies through your head makes you feel really satisfied. Just to remember it. It's like if you had a paint box at the moment when you really don't, and it just, your words can be your color. You can capture it that way. I'll probably think about that later tonight and think how stupid, but that's what you get.
It's probably going to be a better answer than mine. I don't know. I never really thought I still don't really think of myself as a poet. I just write whatever comes. And sometimes it looks good on paper and sometimes I just recycle it. So, but I've been writing ever since I could.
Yeah, you are. Other questions? Weston?
Yeah, well, maybe could you guys give us a little bit of insight into the writing process for each of you? I know you mentioned, for example, writing on the trail or riding horseback. So what's the revision process, or is it just inspiration?
Again, for me, it's just whatever comes. Every time in college when I tried to sit down and write an actual poem for a class, I never could do it. But when I go outside, things just come to me, whether through experience or through rainstorms or windstorms, who knows, and I write them down and edit them afterwards.
I read something recently, I think it was Billy Collins, he was quoting someone else, so that isn't the source, but that's kind of halfway there. He said, revision isn't cleaning up after the party, it is the party. And I love that. I probably said it wrong. But to me, I think once you get over the fact that reworking and finding the right word, and the shape of the right word, and a new word, a word can keep you going forever and ever, it just seems, and keep coming back to that line. We were talking about, you're revising until you get up here, and then you revise when you go back to your seat. It's constantly revising. So I think revising is just magnificent. The number of words we have in our vocabulary and the new ones we pick up. And if you read someone like a Mary Oliver, or you read, the great wordsmiths that we have around us, old and new, we're always learning from each other, from poets around us as well. So the revision, I think, can happen anywhere. It can happen in a car, whatever. It's always in your head.
And it's fun with the revision, because the revision always requires inspiration, even though you're retooling. But, I was at Helicon West the other night, and one of my Helicon West people said, I went to the most amazing workshop and I was inspired to write the first poems ever of my life. He didn't say it exactly like that, but that was the way I took it. He said, yeah, well, it was you. You're the one, you were teaching this workshop. And wow, and so that's my inspiration too. Someone teaches, someone reads, it doesn't have to be poetry, it can just be anything. I'm so inspired by people's words and by their stories and by the way they put those stories together. I was inspired by Margaret and Heidi tonight. I hope I can write something when I get home. I was so dumbfounded by the wondrousness of your work. I didn't write a word. I don't know what's wrong with me. Usually I would have been stealing everything you wrote. Any other questions? Way in the back. Is that Millie?
Yeah. I was just curious, since Heidi, I know that Margaret was one of your mentors and teachers. For each of you, how has a mentor or teacher kind of shaped your work?
So how Margaret shaped my work, is that
Or not this.
just a teacher?
Don't feel you're not on this. Anybody.
How much money do you have, Margaret? I think everyone has shaped my work, like every teacher, whether they were in the English department or whether they were in the science department, helped shape me. I mean, I came from Wellsville, Utah, and so to have professors from other places experience the world, and you could integrate that into their classrooms and teach me about different places. It was just fantastic. And for Margaret in particular, being in her class was a lot of fun because she wasn't like the other ladies in Hiram, Utah. She was more of a wilderness gal, which is kind of the path that I was taking. And so it was inspiring to know that I could do that. As a kid, that I didn't have to have a certain path. I could take whatever path was open.
Hiram, Utah was an interesting place to be, to settle. I came from Northern California, so Marysville, California is not so different than Wells, but yes, it is. In Wellsville, Utah. But, yeah, it is. I'm sorry. But, a small town is a small town. I think learning from your mentor can truly be anybody. It can be just the book, can be a teacher, can be mainly just keeping your ears open, paying attention to the sounds of writers around you. I think listening to NPR, picking up, getting great audio while you're driving along and hearing that, and borrowing lines and hearing new words. It really is amazing. I've been very lucky to have great teachers along the way, but I love the Ferlinghettis and the Ginsbergs and you have to go all over the map to pick up what is the passion of this particular person. I think it's the passion more than the shape of the words. Did he or she mean it?
And of course, I can never talk about this without talking about my mentor, Ken Brewer, the poet laureate of Utah, who left us way too early. And he, when I wrote these poems that I read to you tonight, the 1997 ones, he was my graduate advisor as well as my poetry teacher. And when I was trying to figure out what to do for my thesis, because I was in American Studies and I was doing folklore papers on menopause issues, like late life babies, goddess of hysterectomy, menopause, we don't talk about it. I had all these great publishable papers on this. Didn't really think so much about wanting to do those for my thesis, and Ken looked me in the eye and said, well, you're in my class, don't you have 60 pages of poetry? And I said, yes. And he said, well, put an introduction on, there you go. That's it. We're going to sign books. Ask more questions later, and thanks. Have a great evening.